Dizzy Dreamer ASMR. Good evening. My name is Dizzy Dreamer ASMR. Welcome back to my ASMR channel. We are currently in full swing of celebrating the spooky season here on my channel, and so today I have a different type of video, kind of keeping in line with spooky season, but also my passion for history that you might know of if you watched some of my older videos. So today I bring to you the most haunted places in Canada. So I've compiled a list of 3 different places across Canada that are home to some of the most documented cases of paranormal activity or have the richest history of ghost stories. So I may make a part 2 to this. We'll see how this goes, but without further ado, sit back, relax, maybe get a warm blanket, warm drink, and enjoy. The first haunted location is a place called the Fairmont Chateau Frontenac, most popularly called Chateau Frontenac, located in Quebec City, Quebec. It's a historic hotel that's situated in the Vieux-Quebec region of the city, and it was built by the Canadian Pacific Railway Company and opened its doors in 1893, which means that this year marks its 131st anniversary. It was designated as a National Historic Site of Canada and also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The building itself was built in a chateau-esque style, meaning resembling that of a castle, and has 18 floors and 610 guest rooms. That's a lot of housekeeping. So some interesting facts about the hotel's history. It was once used as a meeting place to discuss strategy for World War II, because it held the first and second Quebec conferences, which hosted the likes of Franklin Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, and the Canadian Prime Minister Mackenzie King. The chateau was also used as a filming location for one of Alfred Hitchcock's films titled I Confess in 1953. So now, on to the ghost stories. According to most believers, the hotel is home to 2 ghosts. One is a ghost named Louis de Bois de Frontenac, and the other is a woman in white. So, the hotel was actually named after Louis de Bois de Frontenac, who was a 17th century governor of New France. According to legend, Louis died of an illness on the land that would later house the hotel while his fiancée was traveling overseas. He now haunts the hallways of the chateau, searching for his love and waiting for her to return to him so that they can spend eternity in the afterlife together. The hotel has received many reports of a man wandering around the hallways, almost as if he was searching for something or someone, dressed in 17th century clothing and bearing a resemblance to Louis. According to these reports, the ghost will walk and disappear into walls when anyone tries to approach him or address him. And the ghost supposedly can be most often seen on the 2nd shipped to Newfoundland up until 1997 to be aged. And after a lot of back and forth in ownerships and different uses of the vaults, they were restored in the late 1990s and opened to the public as an events hall. And this is when people began noticing some pretty eerie things. Employees started to report phantom voices when they could hear their name being called while alone in the vaults with no possible explanations. One employee reported, this is in her words by the way, "It didn't happen to me until a few years later when there were 2 occasions," she said. Adding, one time a visitor had entered the vaults while Blackwood was working by herself. "I heard a sort of sing-song voice say, 'Kelly,' and I went into the vault and the visitor wasn't looking at me. And when she asked the visitor why they called her, the visitor had no idea what she was talking about." So the same employee claimed she often heard footsteps crunching over gravel down in the vaults, even though the vaults were renovated and no longer floored with gravel. As you can see in this picture, they have hardwood flooring. So, this is in her words again. "She and I, as in her and a coworker, sat at the desk, and we were probably not on our best behavior that day as we sat talking about things. Then we heard footsteps, and we were like, oh my gosh, we managed to miss a visitor." 2 vaults meet up at the end down in the vaults themselves, and so the 2 women checked the area to discover nobody was there. So the spirit said to be haunting the Newfoundland vaults is a man named John Nolan, who was originally from Catalina, but lived in a rooming house a few streets away. So Nolan mysteriously disappeared one day in the area of the vaults. According to a psychic who visited the vaults many, many years later, there was a gap between the ceiling and the ceiling of the warehouse and the vaults, which is where Nolan stayed. And it's unclear if he was forced to stay here or if he was hiding from somebody, because he was also reported to have been considerably wealthy at the time. But the psychic said that when he was hiding in that area, he was desperate for food and actually had to resort to eating a stray cat. And what's curious about this claim by the psychic is that years later, after the psychic visited, when archaeologists were excavating the site, they uncovered the half body of a cat. Most recently, an image went viral in the early 2010s for supposedly capturing an image of a ghost in a white shirt during the sound check of a wedding event. Here is that image. I circled the supposed ghost in red. What do you guys think of this image? The third and final haunted location is the Bytown Museum in Ottawa, Ontario. This museum is reported by many to be one of the objects moving all by themselves, as objects are found in different locations from where they are originally placed. Staff have also witnessed doors closing on their own and items shifting without any apparent cause. One object that seems to be particularly haunted is that of a porcelain doll that seemingly sheds real tears and is often positioned